Hey TFHSC fam. So, okay, this isn't your usual live from the living room episode.
No.
This was actually an idea that was born out of a meeting as we were talking with Pastor B, and I really wanted to pick her brain. So,
Well, I mean, we're gonna have a party. Basically, this is the celebration party of everything that God did in 2022.
Yes.
We need a year in review. And like you're part of this family, we want to celebrate this and share this with you. If you've been part of TFHOC for one episode of Live from the Living Room, or you've been here, you're an OG. You're like from our M3 days in Anaheim. Like, we're glad that you're here, and we're going to put an exclamation mark on everything that God did in 2022.
Yes. And, I actually reheard your message from last year.
Okay.
And you really said that, we sometimes speed forward to the next year, that we don't take in what God did.
That is very true.
In the last year. And the word that you guys gave for last year, for what 2022 was going to be all about, was the time is now.
Well, we need to pause. So we have this thing around TFH where we get away, we pray, we fast, and we say, God, what is the intention? What is the word, or what is the phrase that you want us to hold on to in like everything that goes on during the year? When we kicked off, and we've done this literally since year one. And
do you remember what all of them were?
I do. So year one was abundance. When we were only a couple years old. I mean, we were a couple of months old. And that was our word for the year was abundance. And we just saw God do amazing things. Like we launched our church, and we had almost 1,000 people there for the opening. We're like, what the heck is going on? So it was definitely a year of abundance. And then the next year, this is a whole other podcast for another day on wives listening to their husbands. Okay. Because this is that year. My husband said, I think our word for the year needs to be battle ready. And I was like, that's way too intense and aggressive, Matthew. Like, no, it can't be. And so we kind of went back and forth, and he got what we were saying, and we landed on the word that we felt was like apropos, and that was live the dream. And we believe that God was birthing a lot of new dreams. However, what year was that, friends? 2022. Matthew heard from God. And had our word been battle ready, y'all, we would have been, from the jump, we would have been ready. Like a pandemic, what? And then last year's word, which is the message you heard, was the time is now. We sensed that the Lord was calling us with a sense of urgency for what the Lord was doing in this house. And that is what we're celebrating. The time is now, 2022, year in review.
And how do you feel looking at the whole scope of the year?
Sheesh.
How did we do with that word?
Okay, so before we started, Amy said, okay, so this is kind of like a report card. You need to understand, I'm a nerd. I want all A's, okay? So, like, I'm really going to shoot for those A's. I will say this, more than a scale, I think I'm really trying to break a model of comparison, or what is success. I really want success to be defined as what we input, not the output, because we can only control the input. It's God that controls the output.
Yeah.
So I would say the theme that God gave us, the word, the phrase that God gave us for 2022 is the time is now. And everything that we set out to do, that we sense that the Lord was calling us to do, from evangelism to discipleship to community groups to building out this venue and having people come in and resourcing God's people. And it's not just about our church, it's the capital C church, missions trips, literally, Amy. Like 95% of everything that we sense God asked us to do, and even the lofty, crazy dreams, God did. So I'm just blown away. I will say the one thing that we didn't accomplish, which was my idea, and so maybe I didn't hear from God on this one. I was like, oh my gosh, you guys, what if we did a food truck, and like the prophets will go and feed the homeless, and everyone's like, yeah, that's such a great idea. Okay, so that was the one thing we didn't accomplish. But other than that, we did everything that we set out to accomplish. Yeah.
I even what you said about standing with, the capital C church.
Yes, ma'am.
When you guys announced the time is now, which was at Team Conference, which is a plug. If you guys are around, go to Team Conference.
January 15th, Saturday, January 15th.
I was about to ask you the date because I didn't remember off the top of my head. But that day there was a church that came in.
Oh, yeah.
Can you share that story? Because that stayed with me like this whole year. What happened?
Generosity isn't something that we talk about. Generosity is something that we want to live. We want to be a generous house because God is a generous God. Team Conference is our gathering where we gather those that are part of our home team. Those that call TFHOC and serve on this team here, we call them our home team. They make a house a home. And we want to resource them. We want to equip them. And so we bring in guest speakers, and we have also speakers on video. But we had Chad Veach and Craig Rochelle. This year we have Levi Lesko, Craig Rochelle, Natalie Runyon from Raised to Stay. I mean, we got some amazing people. But last year we decided that we were going to open up a few spots for for those. It was like a last minute thing, like, hey, we're going to extend and put in 40 more chairs or something like that. And we sold out the same day, which was amazing. We didn't know who those people who bought the tickets were until we were here. And I got to meet this pastor that brought his team of 10 people. Long story short, they had been a church at that point. They had been around for almost 7 years, and they didn't have a venue. They didn't have a building. And they came here and they were looking at what God has done. And they were like, this has given us hope for what's going on with us. And they, long story short, the rent had been raised X amount of dollars per month, and they just couldn't afford it. And they were a little stressed, like, do we move and all this other stuff. And I met him during the lunch break. And then after the lunch break, I pulled Matt aside. I said, hey, I met this pastor. I think it would be great if you spoke to him. So then Matt got a chance to hear like where they're at and what they're up to. And Amy, I just had a conviction. Matt had the same conviction. We asked them, like, how much more is it per month? And then Matt did the math in his head because he's German. So Germans, they're good with some money. They're good with orders. They're good with budgeting. And so because we have been wise with our finances, we said, we're going to pay for that overage for a year for them. And then we just cut a check for them. And that day we pulled them up on stage in front of all of our home team members and our guests. And we were able to pray and prophesy and financially cover the addition for that church to stay in the building that they were in. And I just get emotional even thinking about it right now, because when you're faithful to take care of God's people, God takes care of us. And it's been a hard year, but God's people have really just shown up, and it's been beautiful.
I think that as you say that, a lot of churches have felt that they've been like in years of recovery or seasons of recovery.
Girl, there needs to be a whole other podcast on like why pastors need therapy. Yes.
And I think it's crazy that you decided, or you and Pastor Matt and the team decided for it to be the time is now, when it should be, no, we should kind of be safe.
Cover the eggs, gird your loins, be safe, just be on the back foot. And that has not been our heart at all.
Yeah.
In fact, we're like, no, the time is now to take ground, because we were closed. We were one of the rare churches that was closed for 17 months, 16, 17 months in California. And then we were doing the renovations and the build out and all this other stuff. It was very complicated. And so a lot of people would have kind of backfooted and say, hey, let's be cautious. Let's be slow. And we were like, no, step on the gas pedal. Let's go. People need Jesus. We need to make up for the years that we weren't able to gather. And so we did not play it safe. We doubled down.
And how do you feel that as a church, we responded to the vision
It's
that
so
you
great.
and Pastor Matt
So,
casted?
I'm so proud of this community. I mean, for maybe in some contexts we would be a big church, but I've always been part of really big churches. So I don't consider ourselves to be a big church, but I think given our size and what we've been able to do and impact, I mean, just some numbers and statistics is, we're almost at 3,000 salvations that have happened in this house. I mean, hundreds of baptisms that have happened. We've been able to give away thousands of dollars in the community and also to other churches around the globe. And somebody out there is like, that's the problem with these churches. It's all about numbers and statistics. And to me, I'm pausing and saying, wait, time out. Statistics and numbers are representative of people. And that's the vision of this house, to create a space where people can come in and experience freedom and life in Jesus. So when I take a look at our impact, I mean, this year we went to 3 services. We're very excited about that. Our home team has grown by 150 people. Those are the servants of the house. I mean, people getting involved, people being in community groups. I think I don't want to make this up, but I think like 60% of our church is in community groups, and our community groups aren't just local; they're around the globe. Shout out to Rosa Trout, who is in the UK. She had a burden on her heart to do a community group in person. Well, one person who works at the coffee bar, her name is Kathy. Shout out to Kathy Bihar. Kathy had a friend that lived in the UK, and Kathy's been telling her, "You watch my church, watch my church." So she started watching, and she said, "Okay, fine. I'm going to take a step, and I'm going to be part of a community group." So she went to the website to sign up for a community group, and then she found, wait, there's a community group in the UK. Wait, there's a community group in my area. Wait, there's a community group 8 minutes from my house. So she showed up at this house where she didn't even know, and somebody from TFH had opened their heart and their home in her community in the UK. And it's these stories that they blow my mind. And I'm so proud of this small community that has made the globe feel really small.
Was there a moment during the year where you said, this word is being met with obedience, like it was coming into fulfillment? a moment that it just hit,
Oh, girl, I would say,
or many moments?
Matt and I would have very different answers because my husband, if you're familiar with Enneagram, my husband's an Enneagram 8. They're challengers. It's like there's no wall that he cannot knock down. In fact, he has if you've noticed his hands, I love his hands. He has very big hands, and I call him Wreck-It Ralph because his just like his sausage fingers and like there's just I can just take down the enemy, you know. And like for me, so the time is now for him is just it was like a command, like do it.
Yeah.
You don't ask questions. And for me, I'm like, the time is now. I'm like, oh, but Lord, I'm so tired. But Lord, will you come through? But Lord, do we have finances? So I'm going to say I will pick one moment and I'll pause on that for a second. But I would say generally for people like me and of my temperament, when God asks you to do something, you're going to ask yourself a lot of questions, and that's okay. Asking questions doesn't mean that you're doubting. Asking questions is that you just want to make sure that you're really sure.
Yeah.
And so I would say, one of the toughest moments this year is when we looked at our finances, and we have always been financially stable. Everything has been up and to the right, and we're very blessed, and God's been very faithful and very good. But towards the latter end of the year, I mean, our nation, if you're in the U.S., our nation's in recession, and people are experiencing job loss and fear. And so for us as a church, we feel the residual effects of that. And to be honest with you, I was a little bit concerned. Are we going to be able to financially, the rent went up in our venue, and we start thinking about giving. And I think our nature is to say, if we don't have, then let's save and not spend. And we learned this from one of our pastors is when you feel like you don't have, give and trust God. So I remember at one point this year, there's another church that I love dearly. I was actually just with them in Miami, and they didn't have a venue. They were 7 years old and very big, successful church, but they didn't have a building, and they found a building, and they did a building campaign. And I told Matthew, I said, babe, I know this feels very scary, but I think we need to cut a check and sow seed into what God's doing in Miami. And we did. And we're here today, and the Lord has covered all of our bills, and we are in the black. We're not in the red, and we have big vision for 2023. God's been faithful.
I'm like moved by the story, but also in the message you gave when you casted the vision, you also said that around Valentine's Day is when we start losing track of our goals.
Yes.
And we start losing track of the things that we said we were
The
going to do.
resolutions.
The resolutions
that you make on January 1st. Like, I think the statistic is ridiculous. I want to say it's like 90% of us will walk away from our resolutions by February 14th.
Yeah. And as you're talking about the highs and lows, because the truth is that in churches, I think I've learned that there is no perfect church. And there's always seasons that come and go.
Yeah.
And you got to learn how to ride the wave
of
whatever's happening. Did you feel that you really had to grasp to that word that God gave during this year when maybe it wasn't the best, or when things were getting harder, when faith seemed to lack?
Absolutely. So we have these we will come out with merch at the top of every year. And I always get my merch first because that is a reminder. Like, I'm going to wear what it is that we believe God spoke to us. And so the word for the year is the time is now. And we had these sweatshirts, black sweatshirts, and they had tan writing, and it was literally right over my heart. And it was a reminder for me that, like, I can't backfoot. I can't be afraid. I've got to trust the God that has got us to this point will be the God that will get us to the next point. And the time is now. Like, so I'm going to say, absolutely, 100%. And I'm encouraging everyone on my personal podcast. I have an episode that's the word for the year and how we actually get a word for the year. Because I believe that there's people out there that are like, what do you mean you have a word for the year? And so I take people through and really understanding, how do I hear from God to determine what is the year, my word for the year and the phrase for the year, what I'm anchoring myself in. And so I'm excited about the word for this year, which you will not find out until the beginning of next year. But if you come to Team Conference, we release it then, and we'll have merch for you as well.
That we can wear over our heart.
I don't know if it's going to be over our heart, but yes, we'll wear it. Yes. But I'm excited for it. I feel like it's a word for this house, and it's a word for those that call this house home.
What are you most excited about for next year?
I'm going to say the bounce back. You know, within American culture, specifically within women, there is this sad culture where we're putting an emphasis on the bounce back after women get pregnant, right? So I'm going to take that nomenclature to kind of paint a picture. I feel like the Lord has been birthing in TFH a lot of great and new things, right? And the bounce back is like when God gives you something to birth, there is a season where you're in pain and you're kind of questioning a lot of things. A lot of women will have postpartum depression. Like there's a lot of things that happen when you birth something. I think that this is the season where we've gotten this venue. God is growing our team. This is the healthiest team I think the team has ever been, the healthiest the team has ever been. And I am so excited to step into 2023, not with like this, a thin sense of faith, like I just say it until I believe it, fake it till you make it. No, no, no. A real sense, a deep-seated sense of we are going to be resilient. We are going to bounce back, and we are going to see God do in his strength what we couldn't do in our strength over the last 4 years.
I thought of, I know that the word came from 2 Kings with
Yes, ma'am.
Hezekiah.
Yeah, you did your homework, Amy.
I
How's
did.
that?
I had to. I had to be prepared because I was like, I need to know what actually going on. But in Hezekiah, he actually prays a prayer to God.
Yes.
And he says, remember your servant. And I feel like, as you're saying this, I feel like the Lord is remembering TFHOC.
Yeah.
Because Hezekiah always met God with honor, wanting to give him glory.
Yeah.
And from the moment I stepped into, I was there at M3, and
Yeah.
I'll share the story of how I came to TFH one day. But when I stepped foot here, and I saw that in the back that said "Welcome Home," I knew that this house was doing one thing, and that was to honor God.
Yeah.
And when Hezekiah prayed that prayer, the Lord actually granted him 15 more years
Yeah.
to do more work. And I just feel like God's given, he's breathing life over this church to do more work.
Yeah.
And with everything that you're saying, it just hasn't been just here, but it's moving outside of here, outside
Amen.
these doors. And
Amen.
that's the goal of a church, that it wouldn't just be here, but it would move outside of the church. So I think, can I give the grade then of how
Oh my gosh. Okay, hold on. Let me prepare my heart. Because the 4.0 student, the A++ girl in me. Okay, go, Amy.
today you receive an A++.
Yes! If you're part of this community, you get an A++ too. We want to see
Not
our
just a 4.0, like
no,
a
a 4.5, honey. Don't just stop that. Yes, it's the AP of Christianity. All right, we coming at you dope right here, live and direct as we welcome in 2023. We're excited. Hey, if you're in Southern California or you're visiting, you want to come to the happiest place on earth, it ain't Disneyland, it's the Father's house. So you have an open standing invitation. Come connect with Amy, come connect with me. We are celebrating what God's going to do, not just what he has done, but what he will do in 2023.
That's right. And we are so honored that we get to do this with you, and we get to do life with you, church with you, and just see what God's going to do.
Amen.
Next year.
Next year.
All right.
God
We
bless
love
you,
you guys.
fam.
We'll see you.